He doesn't want you, Victor. Hello, and welcome to Action Surge, the series where we take an in-depth look at your turn in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Today we are going to be talking about the Disengage action. The Disengage action is used when you are trying to extricate yourself from a combat safely. Now, to understand the Disengage action, there's actually one new action, one new part of your turn that we need to talk about. I left it out of the introduction to this series because it wasn't something that was strictly on your turn. Here, though, we do need to talk about it. A reaction is something that you can take one of in any round of combat. However, it happens outside of your turn. Similar to a bonus action, if you have a reaction, it will tell you when the trigger is that causes it to occur. Now, a reaction is typically something your character has to have access to, whether it is a spell or class ability that allows you to react to a specific trigger. There is one reaction that all characters in the game get access to, and it's called the opportunity attack. An opportunity attack is an attack you make when an enemy leaves your reach in combat. Most characters will have a reach of 5 feet, so the area immediately around them on a battle grid. If you have something like a polearm, you may have a reach of 10 feet, and then different monsters will have different levels of reach, 5, 10, 15 feet. It can get pretty absurd, but we're not going to worry about that too much. The only thing we need to know is that a reaction is something that you do not on your turn, and that there's this nifty thing called an attack of opportunity, an opportunity attack, that happens when someone leaves the space immediately around you in combat. We need to know about that because of the Disengage action. The Disengage action is used to prevent an attack of opportunity from happening on your character. If you are to simply leave someone's reach in combat, they are going to attack you. With this, the Disengage action prevents those opportunity attacks. Let's go ahead and look at the exact mechanics of how this works. If you take the Disengage action, your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks for the rest of the turn. As said in the introduction, the Disengage action is tightly linked to the opportunity attack rule. Because of that, it would be helpful for us to take a look at the phrasing of that mechanic here as well. You can make an opportunity attack when a hostile creature that you can see moves out of your reach. To make the opportunity attack, you can use your reaction to make one melee attack against the provoking creature. The attack occurs right before the creature leaves your reach. You can avoid provoking an opportunity attack by taking the Disengage action. You also don't provoke an opportunity attack when you teleport or when someone or something moves you without using your movement, action, or reaction. For example, you don't provoke an opportunity attack if an explosion hurls you out of a foe's reach or if gravity causes you to fall past an enemy. Now that we've taken a look at the official mechanical wording of the Disengage action, when should you use it? It seems pretty straightforward. If you are surrounded by enemies and they want to attack you as you run away, you might want to disengage. Getting a little bit more specific though, any single attack is typically not going to be of the utmost danger to your character. So there's 2 major situations that you're going to want to think of when you are considering taking the Disengage action. The first moment is if your character is going to be in a great danger from that attack. Now, this great danger can come in a couple forms. Either your character has a very low number of hit points left. In that case, a single attack could be pretty bad for them. On the other hand, sometimes when a monster attacks, for instance with a giant claw or tentacle, when they hit with an attack, they not only hit and do damage, but they can grapple you and stop you from moving. If there's a chance that the enemy can stop you from moving with a single attack, it may be worth it to disengage. The other time when you will want to be taking the Disengage action is if you are surrounded by enemies on most sides. While any single character can take one hit without much concern, if you have a lot of enemies around you, that is a lot of attacks of opportunity that you may not want to take. Additionally, when you have many enemies around you, your dungeon master may be using an optional rule known as flanking. Whether flanking gives a +2 bonus on attack rolls or advantage on the roll, the more enemies you have around you, the more likely they may be to hit you. So not only are there more attacks coming in, but they're likely to be more accurate depending on how your dungeon master runs the game. In this case, taking the disengage action may be the best thing for your turn. Now, disengage is one of the actions that may sound like it's not as much fun to take. You'd rather cast a spell, you'd rather attack with a weapon. And that's why when you take the disengage action, it's very important for you to put your own spin on the story and your own style and how you're doing it. Let's take a look at that. Disengaging is something that can have a whole lot more combat narrative than you may otherwise think. Yes, it is safely getting out of a situation tactfully, but the way your character does that can be as flavorful as when you take the attack action. Just because the goal is to get out of the combat without taking an opportunity attack does not mean it has to be something like you smack a blade away and then just step out. Yes, you can be a very defensive duelist where you get through a couple nice little swishes, a parry, and you back away. That is one way to disengage. However, if you are less of a finesse fighter, if you are a bit more of a brute, you can just barrel your way through. You can shoulder check people out of the way as you are attempting to go where you're trying to go. Now, yes, you can't move through them in the combat square, but it can still be the story you tell. If you don't want to be shoulder checking, maybe you just want to be an intimidating presence. A large bellowing shout to intimidate your enemies, to give them hesitance, can open up the opportunity for you to escape as well. There's not a whole lot of ways of intimidating in the game of D&D that isn't very based on how the game master reacts to your intimidation roll. Using something like the disengage to symbolize intimidating opponents for them to hesitate is a wonderful way to add that narrative beat to your character and still do what you want to do in combat. Aside from those two things, maybe you might be tricksy. You're not a good fighter, you're not a good duelist, you're not an overbearing fighter, but you do have tricks. Whether it's picking up a candle that is currently burning on a nightstand and lobbing it at someone to distract them to get out, or maybe going in your pocket, getting some pocket sand, throwing it in their face. Both of those can open up the opportunity for your character to disengage. Aside from those two things, maybe for a bit more of a spellcaster character, without using a spell slot, without using a cantrip, without using anything in the character's actual character sheet, maybe you want to use magic to disengage. Whether it's a druid using a vine to wrap up, grab the opponent's leg, and pull them back half a step to prevent that swing to hit, you can use that to get out of here. If you are a Doctor Strange like magic user, maybe you create a spiraled shield that intercepts between you and your opponents before stepping away. There's so many character beats that you can find in the disengage simply by accepting it for what it is. You are mechanically getting out of a combat with someone safely. What that looks like functionally does not matter. And because the functionality of what that looks like doesn't matter, that allows it to be so many other things. From the intimidating bellow, to the deafness, to the tricks, to really having more freedom with spellcasting than you probably ever will using the spell slots and cantrips of your character sheet. Just taking this beat as describing what magical effect you're using to get away. You have so many stories to tell to disengage. However, it's when we get deeper into stories that it might be a little bit harder to actually disengage. We kind of go on tangents. But that's a story for another time. We don't got time for that. I really have to get going. Yeah, I have to get going. And with that, we reach the end of our Disengage episode on Action Surge. I'm going to be getting out here, if you're cool with that. Just maybe hang around in the general area. Okay, I might be trying to dodge the point, but I'm sure if you just hang around for next week, it'll make more sense. See you then.